And we are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another very special edition of Field Stormers for the simple fact it is the college football playoff reaction show. So, as always, I'm your host, Mo Murphy. With me, my co host, Walker Bailey. And in the building, we brought the president out and the vice president, 1A, as I always call him, back on another appearance of Field Stormers. Pre-show, he was fired up. I expect him. He's going to have that same energy. We definitely wanted to do this show for the initial reaction, and the committee gave us everything to react to. So before we get going, Walker, what's going on, bro?
This committee sucks ass. They suck. I'm pissed. But otherwise, great.
Hey, Chris, what's going on, bro?
I'm just here for the entertainment, man. I'm here for that. I don't have a dog in a race. I'm a Duke Blevels basketball fan, but I'm a Canes fan. So these rankings don't mean anything to me. Unfortunately, my team can't score a touchdown, but I'm here for the entertainment because the chat room really set it off, and I'm here for all the entertainment. It's good.
Read none of it for the simple fact I wanted to save any type of thought I had for the show. Jeff,
you did a great. Your restraint, Mo, is admirable.
I seen it at first, and then I was like, okay, I'm not doing this because then I want to entertain conversation. And I said I was going to save it for the show. Jeff said he was going to save it for the show. And of course, if there was anybody who was going to come in there hot, it was Walker. Like, Walker couldn't wait until the show to get his thoughts off. But we have a lot and plenty to say on this show. So before we get going, what I want to do is I want to bring up the picture of these rankings, which I am not doing a good job, but all right. So here are the initial college football playoff rankings. So I will go through it from 25.
Shout out to Tulane.
Yeah. And I will go through it down 25 all the way to 1. So keep your refrains. I'm just going to read down the line starting at 25. UCF, 24 Texas, 23 Oregon State, 22 NC State, 21 Wake Forest, 20 Syracuse. Tulane comes in at 19, Oklahoma State 18, North Carolina 17, Illinois 16, Penn State 15, Utah 14, Kansas State 13, UCLA 12, Ole Miss 11, LSU 10, USC 9, Oregon 8, TCU 7, Alabama 6, Michigan 5, and for your final 4, Clemson at 4, Georgia at 3, Ohio State at 2, and Tennessee with the inaugural debut in the playoffs at number 1. I know Volunteers Country is feeling amazing right now, heading into the biggest matchup of the season so far as the number 1 team in the country. So, Walker, I will start with you. Before we touch the top 7 or 8, just your initial thought as you were seeing the rankings come out. When did you start predicting who would be where? Just what was your initial thought on the rankings without going on your TCU rant right yet? We're not there yet.
I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, I am happy for Tulane. I know that some people believe that all Group of 5 schools should just be banned from the sport, but I am happy that I am happy that Tulane's in there. They played really well. They actually have a head-to-head win on the road against the 13th ranked team in the country. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. It's one of the rare occasions where a Group of 5 team gets in and actually has a win over another team in these rankings. And then happy for UCF starting an Ole Miss transfer at quarterback. So that's just a little bit personal. Like, I'm just kind of glad to see that they're having success. Gundy's group really slid. That's unfortunate. Also, Illinois. Shout out Brett Bielema. 16th, just kind of rolling along, kind of on the path to the Big Ten championship. So shout out to Bert. Like, that was pretty cool. I'll stop there and leave the top 15 for later. Let's just stop. I need to stop myself.
Okay. So, Chris, initial reactions. I know you mentioned how you don't have a dog in the fight, but just the initial reactions, how much chaos did you think was going to come from these college football playoff rankings? I
mean, I expected chaos, but not to this extent. It's pretty wild, especially with the top 4 and all that. But it's interesting to see how. I just don't get the criteria. I don't get the criteria for the committee. Like, is it strength of schedule? Is it, and we talked about it before, it seems like it's the decal on the side of your helmet, because we mentioned if TCU had the Longhorn on the side, probably different. they're probably in that top 4, most likely.
Whatever
So,
number one is, they're ranked like 3 spots ahead of that.
Yeah.
Just because they're Texas.
Exactly, yeah, because the brand. I mean, branding is very important. I mean, it's showing that it's very important because we've seen the minute Texas wins a game, they get ranked top 15. You know, some of those schools like they want to rank them so high, and like it's crazy. And like you mentioned with Alabama, it's like no matter if Alabama loses or not, they're still like they hold their own destiny. Their destiny's still in their hands. Like, and it feels like Alabama's always in it, even if they're ranked 6th, 7th, 8th. It doesn't matter. They're always in it. They're always going to find a way to figure out how to get Bama in the race because they just can't afford to have them. So, some interesting things with that. But I'm interested to hear you guys your takes on this.
Yeah. So Jeff, initial thought just on the college football playoff as a whole.
One that jumped out. No group of 5 even a factor this year. Like that was. Basically, we spent all last season talking about, Cincinnati a few seasons ago, UCF. Like, there's really no factor this year. I'm not saying that's good or bad. Like, that's just something that jumped out. It's like the Pac-12 and Big 12 are huge, huge representatives in the top 25 this year, which is I don't think a lot of us expected that going into the season. So those were some that stood out. We'll get into the top 10 here in a minute. It gets a little muddled up there. But I agree with you guys. They basically said, and I'm an elitist, like everybody admits it. Like I want my playoff to look like this, but I want it to look like this in the 12-team playoff. I don't like this in a 14 playoff. I think it's about the order. It's not about the teams. It's about the order. And when you talk about criteria, what I don't like that these people have done is I don't like how the path that they've given certain teams. Like surprisingly, honestly, Illinois has a really direct path to the playoffs. If Illinois wins out, they're going to the playoffs. They play 2 top 5 teams in the country, and then they'll have so if they win out, Illinois goes in. So like those are ones that stand out. So like Walker brought up, like, shout out to them as to where a team like Utah is kind of dead in the water. Kansas State's dead in the water, even though they're ranked ahead of them. And I've said it every year. The playoff committee doesn't ever pick the games, and it drives me insane. They don't go off on a limb, and I'll just say it right now. You can't have Tennessee and Georgia 1 and 3. If you think Tennessee's better than Georgia, that means you think they will win Saturday night. Georgia can't be the 3rd best team in the country in the playoff rankings. This isn't the AP rankings. The AP rankings, that's what they do. If you're telling me playoff rankings, then you need to pick. You need to have more. Like Chris said, Alabama's got a direct path. Michigan's got a direct path. Most of the teams have a direct path. They've put a roadblock in front of TCU, but I think what they've set up, and I don't think this is fair, is they've set up. As soon as TCU beats Texas, we're going to give them a ton of credit, and then that's when everything's going to get jumbled. But I think that's a BS way to do this, and I'm extremely unhappy with how I said it on Twitter. They've created a reality show is what they've done.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my initial thought, it's hard to talk about your initial thoughts without talking about the top 4, top 6, top 8, but just as I'm seeing it go down the line and just watching it play out, going from 25 to 21 and then 20 to 16, like you said, Illinois kind of has a direct path. You beat Michigan the week before Michigan plays Ohio State. You win the Big Ten championship. I don't think it's a direct path to the playoffs, essentially. As much as we would like it to be, I think this would be a scenario where the brand and the eye sitting on the side of the helmet could actually keep them out, even with beating Ohio State and Michigan, just because they have a loss. And it'd be another way to creep undefeated Clemson in there. If TCU finished undefeated in a 1-loss SEC and an undefeated SEC champ, like I think that kind of caps it out. Or maybe even put Oregon in there over Illinois, just because, even though I think you have to believe if they beat Ohio State and Michigan, I think you have to believe that you've earned your way into the top 4. Or we just think both teams are completely, absolutely overrated and we give you no credit, which since it's Ohio State and Michigan, I don't see you not getting any type of credit by beating brands like that. But now I can't do it. Let's get into the top 10. The first team I'm surprised about is LSU at number 10. That is the biggest problem I have. And here's why I say that. They have 2 losses. They got smacked by Tennessee. I know Tennessee is the number 1 team, but they did not belong on the same field as them. And in their other losses to Florida State, who, if I'm not mistaken, has 3 losses, maybe even 4 right now. So that's not, they got 3 losses. So they're not sitting at 2 strong losses. Like, okay, you got smacked by the number 1 team. But if you're telling me the gap between number 1 and number 10 is that big, which throughout the season we've seen it play out, and I'm not sure that it 100% is, but a 2-loss team being number 10 because they face Alabama this week, I think it's absolutely insane, because if LSU loses, this is their 3rd loss, and what it does is exactly what I said it does. These are the type of games where Bama will wipe the floor with somebody. And I don't think that's the case. I think LSU does have a chance, but these are the type of games where we know Bama steps up and the Nick Saban team wipes the floor with this team. And what happens is a number 6 Alabama gets all the credit in the world for absolutely obliterating the number 10 team in the country, who would have been handed their 3rd loss in blowout fashion. So for me, I'll just start with my biggest problem. My first biggest problem is that LSU is going into this week number 10. I think the AP had got it right saying they were 15. 2-loss team, will give them the benefit of the doubt. They could absolutely have an opportunity to jump up if they beat Bama, but we're going to put them at 15 right now because that's a if, and until that if happens, we're not going to do anything with it. I think 15 was very solid for LSU, even though they've been looking really good. I think top 10 is crazy. I think it shows the SEC bias, but I also think it boosts up Alabama's resume after losing the game of the one good team they've played so far. So that's my biggest problem. Walker, hold off on your TCU. What was your biggest problem in the top 10? Not TCU, because we're going to get to that, because we all have the same thoughts about that. So I want to wait on the TCU rant. But what was your second biggest problem about the top 10?
I'll say this about the LSU thing. I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it's really SEC bias. The SEC only has 1 member on this committee. Like, I mean, it's just like everyone else. I think it's a helmet bias, and then I think it's I think it's almost like a pony show. Like, we need to really dress this pony up, so if Alabama goes into Baton Rouge and wins by 2 touchdowns, then we can be like, oh, look at Alabama with this top 10 win. Like, that's what we can give them a whole lot of extra credit for that. I don't think it's an SEC bias, because I mean, look at Ole Miss. Like, they're 8-1 in the SEC and arguably the best division in football, and they're outside the top 10, which is fine. That's where they deserve to be. They don't have a single win in this top 25 college football playoff rankings. Totally cool with where they are. But you know what they're going to do when Alabama wipes the floor with LSU this week? Ole Miss is on a bye. They're just going to move Ole Miss into that top 10, and Alabama comes to Oxford next week. And they're going to do the exact same thing. And they're going to roll it to where Alabama can theoretically get another huge win, which we're going to take care of that. We're going to take care of that problem. So that's what it is. But I'm going to just wait on the TCU thing. Like, that's kind of where I want to interject.
Yeah, hold off on the TCU thing.
Yeah, real quick. Most said it, really good about LSU. What I think they did with LSU is LSU has a shot. If LSU wins Saturday night, they got a really good shot to win the SEC West. Mm-hmm. So go ahead and put them in. Basically, and this is where later I'll go on my tangent. They gave LSU the chance to fail. They're like, we put you at 10, you went out, you're probably going to go to the playoffs. Even though I don't think they think they'll win, they put them on the pedestal to win, as to where the next week, just like Walker said, Ole Miss is in the same situation. So now we're having that conversation. So actually what he just said makes the same amount of sense. We're kind of saying the same thing, that they've given
here's
them.
The problem. Like, let's just say, just in a scenario, LSU wins this weekend, Ole Miss wins next weekend, Alabama's taken care of, they're gone. But then you're talking about Ole Miss has 2 games left that they'll both be favored in. Ole Miss can finish 11-1, not win the West, and there's 0 chance they can get in the playoff because you ranked LSU ahead.
Yeah, that's why I said Ole Miss isn't in the favorable situation. I think that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand why they kicked our ass.
But we'll get into it later, but that's my whole problem with the Tennessee-Georgia thing. It's the same situation. One of these teams isn't going to go to the SEC championship game, but go ahead and put them 1-3. Right. They've got the option to fail, as to where Ole Miss, we're going to make you work for it, or LSU, we're going to it's. They talk out both sides of the mouth, this committee. It drives me insane.
And one thing I want to hit on is, Walker, when I say SEC bias, I'm not saying, I think overall, like the people in the room, I don't care who they're representing. I think the bias is towards the SEC, period. Like it's not about, oh, the SEC guy in the room is pitching for all these teams to be in the top 10. I think all of them believe strongly because guess what? Everybody's thinking with pockets, right? If there's more SEC representation, that's considered the biggest brand of football in college football, not named Ohio State. At this point, for the past few years, not named Ohio State, not named Clemson. Michigan had their opportunity, and Michigan could beat Ohio State this year. That's not the conversation, but what I'm saying is Michigan got one opportunity and got smacked by an SEC team. A Big 12 team has constantly gotten smacked, the same Big 12 team when they enter the playoffs. So the closest best brand of college football has been either Ohio State or Clemson, and then one of the two SEC teams that get in there, albeit LSU, albeit Alabama, albeit Georgia. What they're looking at is like SEC brings the best brand of football to the college football playoff. So when I say bias, I'm not saying it's the one guy in the room that's representing the SEC. I think it's all of them in the room that are sitting and basically saying, how in these playoffs can we determine the best path for the best ratings for the college football playoff while still trying to convince everybody as close as possible that we will put the four best teams in there. And so I think they protect some of those brands for still having an argument. Because guess what? It drives the content leading up to the final ranking. It drives the talk. It gets everybody going, and then everybody tunes into that final ranking, and it puts money in their pockets. And then the college football playoff is a huge time thing that puts money in their pockets. So I'm not saying the SEC bias is from SEC conference people, SEC fans. I'm saying in that room, I think there's a bias towards the SEC, which at this point, I guess rightfully so. They constantly win national championships. Outside of what? Ohio State and Clemson are the only two non-SEC teams to win a national championship in the college football playoff era. So, and those are the two teams that typically get the benefit of the doubt, which we'll talk about Clemson here in a second, as being one of those teams because Clemson's on the side of their helmet, they get the benefit of the doubt. So, Jeff, I'll bring it back to you. Chris, do you have any thoughts before? Because I know you're here for the entertainment, but do you have any thoughts?
I'm thoroughly enjoying this. This is so much fun. Like, because Mo, you hit it on the head. Like, this is not. They're driving us crazy. This is what they want. This creates buzz. This creates controversy, and it's just the first week of it. This isn't even the final. So, like, it gets you ready, gets you blood boiled up for that last ranking, where people are really going to lose it. So, like, this drives content. This is right. Controversy creates cash. This is what they do, and I think they love. Like, they want people to be mad that they're going to think Clemson, because Clemson's resume. Let's be real, Clemson's resume. They're not the top. They're not a top 4 playoff team, but they're Clemson, right?
So they get the benefit of the doubt because they've been there and they won a couple
of doubt, and that's a real thing. If TCU had the resume of Clemson, we'd be talking about TCU as the 4th ranked team, or. So that's the one thing where they're getting everyone riled up, and this is what I love. This is why I'm here. I'm enjoying this. I really am. This is
so we're gonna swing it to you first, Jeff. Before I let Walker go on his tangent. Okay. Right. The biggest problem with us here, there's two teams. It's TCU at 7, while Clemson is sitting at 4. I partially have a problem with Michigan being at 5. Over Clemson, only because, and I know AP poll and college football playoff literally have nothing to do with each other, but like all season long, essentially, Michigan has been ahead of Clemson, and Michigan hasn't given you a reason why they're not better than Clemson. And for me, if we're going to use the neutral field argument, on a neutral field today, I think Michigan obliterates Clemson. Clemson has shown me nothing that I think they could beat Michigan, period. Point blank, that's just me personally. They went into overtime with Wake Forest, who I think Michigan will wipe the floor off of. Michigan will wipe the floor off of Syracuse. The refs handed Clemson the game, and they handled NC State soundly. But I think Michigan does the same thing, if not worse, to all three quality opponents that Clemson has right now. I think Michigan has the same result, if not worse. And I think if we want to do on the neutral field who wins, I would take Michigan. Like, I think Michigan would be favored on the neutral field, and I think Michigan wins that game soundly against Clemson. So that's my problem, is if you take it from that aspect, I think Michigan is a better team than Clemson. But Jeff, Clemson and TCU, this is the meat of the argument. This is why we're here. This is why we come in.
If we're Okay, first of all, what we have to decide here is: are we just going to leave like Alabama, the middle sibling, and just ignore that they're in between? And are we going to just leave Alabama at 6 and be okay with it, and then decide where Clemson should be? Because you kind of need to shuffle. Alabama's a part of it too, because they're the ones with one loss. Like
For
TCU's
me,
done nothing wrong.
if TCU was 4 and Clemson was 7, I wouldn't have a problem with it. If TCU was 4 and Clemson was 7, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Matter of fact, when me and Walker did our early rankings, I had Clemson.
Well, but see, this starts dovetailing or spinning out of control, because then if you're going to do that, what you're saying is who we think hypothetically wins in this giant tournament. Well, then you got to scramble everything.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, if we're going to do that, Ohio State went in the fourth quarter last week down to Penn State. Clemson hasn't looked good. Michigan couldn't score touchdowns against Michigan State. Like, if you really watch the game, like, yes, they were dominant, really had trouble scoring touchdowns. Oregon has looked like the best team in the country for about 4 weeks. So, like, if you start doing that, well, then you got to scramble everything. And that's what I keep saying. This committee needs to decide, like, if you want to stay out of it and let it play itself out, then stay out of it. If you're going to rank it, pick who are actually the best teams, but they will never do that. Like we just talked about, LSU at 10, you're really giving the benefit of the doubt right there. After we we are completely ignoring a Kansas State team that just absolutely gave a good team the worst loss of a season, and they're like, yeah, we don't care.
Yeah, that's true.
As opposed to if the Ohio State has kind of a spurt and beats Penn State team, they give Penn State all the credit in the world. Then they give Ohio State all the credit in the world. So, like, I think Kansas State's victory last week was better than Ohio State's victory. But then all of a sudden you're like, well, the loss column in the conference. And then it really starts coming back to the helmet. Do I love the teams that are in contention for the title right now? I do, because I like the big brands and I like the fun of it and I like the chatter that we're doing right now. But if you're going to tell me like who wins on a neutral field, then all of a sudden Alabama's like, well, if we're going to play a neutral field, Alabama's might be the third best team in the country. If you're just playing a giant playoff on a neutral field, they're a good team, a really good team.
It gets dicey, and that's why I mentioned the neutral field.
Well, of course, that's where it gets dicey. But I'd say we got to.
That's part of their. I feel like for certain teams that's their argument, and then for other teams they're not going to use that same.
Well, that's exactly what I say about this committee. So I'll let Walker lead into this, and I'll get back to the conversation at hand. The TCU at 7, there is absolutely no excuse for it under any criteria. If you're going to tell me like strength of schedule, they're better. If you're going to tell me eye test, they're better than 7. All that. If you had them at 5, I figured they would be at 5 because that tends to what they do with the team that hasn't been there and hasn't done it yet, even though the whole point is they won't let them do it. I get it. I agree with that. I thought they would be at 5, and that the argument would be Clemson 4 or 5 or Michigan 4 or 5. Those 3 teams would be, 4, 5, and 6, right in there. 7 was just a slap in the face. Because now what you've told Alabama is like, we don't care that you lost to Tennessee. Because Alabama at 8, put them at, if you put them at 8 below or put them at 7, put TCU at 6, even that little one, Alabama still has the exact same path to the playoffs. There's no reason you had to do that. You could have put TCU at 6 even if at worst, and it didn't change. It did not change Alabama's trajectory. So that really bothers me, especially when they have a loss and a number in the loss column. They asked them to explain it. It was a terrible explanation. They always fall back on Alabama's good. So like, yes, if Tennessee winds up being the 2019 LSU, one of the best teams we've ever saw, then that holds weight. But what if they don't? Like, what if Tennessee loses this week? Then TCU should be 5 or 4.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting at.
And I think before we let Walker go, I think with what you're saying, Jeff, also is that like Tennessee 1 and Georgia 3 with TCU at 7. Essentially, let's say it's a close game. Let's say Tennessee loses a close game, just for the hype. It protects Tennessee to not fall.
Tennessee is the 5 or 6. I think we could have that conversation later. Who's the most protected team? There's 2 teams on here that are protected, and that's it so far.
Okay, so we'll get to that. Walker, TCU Number 7.
If we had come on here tonight and we were having the discussion as to whether or not like Michigan or TCU deserved the 4th spot, I would have been cool. I would have just been like, you know what? Fine. It's cool. They've got to play Ohio State. It's whatever. And also, I hate the it's gonna work itself out shit. I hate it. This is stupid as hell. You are ranking the teams right now. I do not care that it's going to work itself out. You ranked Clemson in the top 4 based on what? They have a worse strength of schedule than TCU based on your own rankings that you just put forward. They have beat one top 20 team and they are ranked 20th. TCU's beaten 2 teams in your top 20, hasn't lost a game, and plays in the better conference. What are we doing? What are we doing? We're ranking simply based on helmets and the fact that Clemson is likely to go undefeated. So in that sense, I think they're projecting. But what are we like? If you're ranking the teams right now, if you want to give Michigan the benefit of the doubt for beating Penn State and be like, listen, like I just think they're a little bit
Penn
better.
State apparently Penn State's the greatest team in the country right now.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And if you want to give them the benefit of that doubt and even use the sorry ass excuse of the eye test and be like, well, you know, they beat the shit out of that Hawaii team they played earlier in the year, as if anybody gives a shit. Like, seriously, like this is horse shit. It's absolute utter garbage.
Walker, real quick. We're going to keep going on with this. I'm just trying to keep the fire stoked. Did you hear what the chairman's excuse was for TCU?
No, I was driving home. I'm glad I didn't.
It was disgusting. So I will credit to Reese Davis. He asked him directly. He asked him point blank. He's like, dude, like what's with the reasoning? His essential reasoning was because TCU had to come back and win. I swear on my life that's what he said.
Yeah.
As if Ohio State just wasn't down.
Yeah.
As if Michigan didn't struggle with Maryland, as if Alabama didn't lose, as if Ohio State wasn't down in the 4th quarter. All of these things, he's like, TCU, you know, he said, we want balanced teams. I'm like, Michigan doesn't throw the freaking football. But all of a sudden, balanced teams are so important. You can't tell me Michigan's not balanced. Michigan's not more balanced.
So where was Mr. Chairman when Clemson was down 13 in the 4th against that shitty ass Syracuse team
and had to pull their quarterback
and had to make like we don't even know who our quarterback is.
A balanced team had to pull their quarterback.
We have to scream and throw headsets and hope that the officials start calling a bunch of stuff, and then we have to change quarterbacks just to beat Syracuse, who, by the way, goes home the next week into their own stadium and lets Notre Dame beat the ever-living shit out of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, everything you say is right. As soon as he said that, I'm like, uh-oh. Like, I want to fight everybody on the committee. He's like, you know, we were looking for wait a minute. If you're looking for balanced teams, Ohio State's number 6. They're not a balanced team.
No.
They do one thing really well. They throw the football really well, and they got a decent defense, and they played a terrible schedule. I'm saying by their criteria. Yes, do I think Ohio State beats Clemson? I do. TCU, I think it's a game. I think the Ohio State and TCU play a really, really good football game. So, like, you can't tell me it's about balance. No team is balanced. What they say when a team's balanced is if you run the ball a lot, you get credit. You don't get punished for close games if you run the ball a lot.
He definitely.
So Michigan gets all this credit, but you can't throw. Michigan couldn't throw the ball against Michigan State, who Ohio State sleptwalk through, but it's because they're balanced. They didn't score a rushing touchdown until like late in the game, but they're balanced. Because it's a slow game. If it's a slow game, like you're all right. You know, I mean, TCU has the ability to, you know, beat anybody in the country if they're playing right. But since they were down in the game, like, well.
No, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, the other teams try to win too. Like those teams also were trying to win.
We're going to pretend Alabama shouldn't have lost to A&M and Georgia wasn't in a dogfight with Missouri because they're balanced.
Yeah, no, it's not like, oh yeah, man, like Alabama, really great job when you gave Texas A&M that play on the 2 to lose, like,
great with one of the worst throws we've seen this season. Great job.
Yeah, no,
that's my whole point. Like the criteria doesn't make any sense. They screwed up
down that line. Like, that's the thing. If we're gonna start picking apart.
I want to be clear. I want to say something real quick, Mo. I want everybody that's ever listened to my show, everybody in the country. I do not like TCU. I went to Texas. I saw them play Ohio State. I didn't like any of their fans. I didn't have very many good conversations. I got tired of listening to them cry in 2000. I just want me to be clear where I stand, that I'm saying this as a football fan, not as a TCU fan, because I have zero love for TCU, but that doesn't mean they're not getting robbed right now.
Yeah, and my biggest thing is, okay, for the chairman to say, like, well, they had to come back and win. Okay, since we're picking everyone apart, Ohio State was down in the fourth quarter. Give them credit. Sure, it was a hostile environment. That's fine. They were down in the fourth quarter. Since we're just picking
hostile environment at noon.
Right, but I'm just saying, we're just, if we're picking everybody apart, Ohio State was down 21-16 with 9 minutes left. Took a 5-minute, one of the greatest 5-minute stretches you'll see this season in order for them to take away and but it was only 5 minutes of a 60-minute game. But that's neither here nor there, because Jeff, you and I are Ohio State fans, and I will take the win. But we're going to talk about Alabama, who basically had to get handed the W against a quarterback who looked fairly well, who also got benched. And Jeff, this revisits a show that you and I did, who got benched 3 weeks into the season, going into what at that time was a big game against Miami. He got benched. He got benched before what would have been a huge game for Texas A&M and possibly a statement game at that time. Just for the measurement of that time, they benched him going into that game. He turns around, he plays Alabama, and he looks amazing. Also, Alabama only put 300, not even 300 yards of offense on Mississippi State. I get it. They won 30-6, but you didn't even have 300 yards. So offensively, you didn't look.
That was a dominant game. That was a dominant game. They kicked the shit out of Mississippi State.
If we're going to start picking teams apart, like we can pick.
That's fair. No, I'm with you. I'm following you.
We can pick every team 1 through 10. So like you decided to give everybody else credit, including Ohio State.
Except
Tennessee deserves all the credit. Right now, Tennessee deserves all the credit. So does TCU. But those two teams, based on resume, they have the resume to match. They have the performances to match. They have the big wins. And if you have to come back against a very good team to win, then you're a pretty damn good team yourself. That's all I'm saying. Is because you're telling me Ohio State is a pretty damn good team for coming back and dominating Penn State for 5 minutes, but we're not giving TCU credit for coming back and beating, especially at that time, a pretty damn good team. But because Kansas State, here's what they say. They say they had to come back and win because Kansas State beat the living crap out of Oklahoma State. I think that took all the air and gave them all the ammunition to say, no way TCU is that good anymore, because they went mano-a-mano with Oklahoma State. We don't value Kansas State, and look what they did. But granted, it's different circumstances. Oklahoma State probably played the best game they could and lost against TCU, and then turns around and kind of their season's over. They're banged up. Sanders is playing hurt basically for the remainder of the season. So my only problem is TCU resume is similar to Tennessee's. One is number 1. One is number 7. If the resume is similar, the gap should not be 6. All I'm saying, I know Tennessee beat Alabama. I get that. And Tennessee is getting all the credit for that right now.
Tennessee should be number 1. I think we can all agree on that.
Number 1. Like nobody's arguing that TCU should be ahead of, but their resumes are similar. I know Tennessee beat Alabama. They beat the crap out of Kentucky. They beat Florida. They beat the crap out of LSU, who was now number 10. Tennessee is rightfully number 1. But TCU's resume is fairly similar as far as playing ranked teams. Two teams in the top 25 have played the most ranked teams. Tennessee and TCU, both are sitting undefeated. And we're talking about TCU, the gap is 6. Yeah. And in between that are a couple teams who haven't been battle tested, a couple teams that get the benefit of the doubt, and a team that has a loss. That's what separates TCU and Tennessee as far as resume goes. And one team already lost. I'm just saying.
But do you think it's as simple as, yes, TCU teams they beat and have been ranked and all that, but do you think it's a matter of the committee just thinking that the teams that TCU beat, they don't really buy? They don't really buy that they're that good. Even though they're ranked,
Question real quick. Can you find me any team ranked ahead of TCU that hasn't had to play from behind yet this year?
Yeah, most teams have, yeah.
No, you can't. Like, you can't find a team ahead of TCU that has not played from behind at one point.
Every single one of them.
I say this in sincerity. Like, I don't even count Michigan. Not that they've taken care of business, but their schedule is like them and Ohio State. Their schedule is so bad that, like, I don't even know how to judge them. And I'm being serious. I said that about both teams. Like, the whole Big Ten season is based on how good Penn State is. If Penn State's not a good football team, one of these teams is going to get boat raced in the playoffs.
Yeah, and then I think
really pretty helmet though.
But the whole Big Ten.
So why doesn't that affect Ohio State or Michigan? So that's the way the committee's getting their screwing
Oh,
up.
they shit on
Ohio State
Michigan
or
for
Michigan.
the non-conference
Why is it
schedule for
affecting
ranking
TCU?
tonight. They shit on Michigan for their schedule tonight by ranking them outside the top 4. Like if they had played a good schedule, they're ahead of Clemson.
They're better than Clemson though. On the field,
they are definitely
every aspect of what we've seen
but
so
Chris,
far this season.
Chris, see that requires nuance. That requires
just
nuance and context, something that these pea brains don't have.
Like that
brains. That's the best one of the night.
What it does is it requires you to watch. It requires you to watch the games.
NC State. That's it.
The thing is, it requires you to watch the games from start to finish. And year after year, what the committee tells us, I'm sorry, you cannot watch majority of. I've seen TCU play. Have I watched from beginning to end every game they played? No, but I've watched every game that's mattered on their schedule. They are a very good team. Obviously, there's one team I've watched from beginning to end every week, and that's Ohio State. But that's besides the point. I've seen Tennessee. I watched the Bama game. I watched the Kentucky game. I watched the LSU game. Tennessee is the number 1 team in the country. I watched Georgia struggle against Kent State and had to pull away with 4 minutes left in order to win the game. I watched Georgia, who should have lost to Missouri, but whatever. They still got the win, and at the end of the day, winning does matter. But I watched all these teams either have a very strong case for where they're sitting at or have a weak case of why I could knock them back. And TCU was the one team where I'm like, if they were 5, like Walker said, if they were 5 and Michigan was 4, I wouldn't argue it as much. I would still say TCU has I would say TCU has, but what I would say is they're bringing Michigan's fate down to Ohio State. They're basically saying they're going to play Ohio State. They're going to be undefeated going into that game, and their fate is going to cancel them from that. And I'd be okay with that. But TCU sitting behind a team who's lost at the end of the day, and they're coming up on their strength of schedule, but they haven't played their strong part of their schedule.
And another real quick thing about TCU, this is very, very important. They have played their biggest games back to back to back. And that is huge because that's health, that's guys beat up, that's mental exertion, that's focus, that's travel time. It's like you got to watch game film on a good team, and then you got to immediately, you can't constantly, like right now, I promise you right now, Ohio State's not watching Northwestern film. And I mean that seriously. I'm not saying,
and they'll still win by 42.
That's what I'm saying. They're watching Michigan. Like they are not like TCU had to concentrate for a month as to where like these other teams, like even Tennessee, like nothing against them. They are number 1, but like after the Alabama game had a game that they didn't have to worry about. You know what I'm saying? Like TCU just by circumstances had to concentrate and battle for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and they just aren't getting credit for that. As to where like Ohio State's literally had some of their best offensive players just not play, and it because it didn't matter. Now, what if Ohio State's schedule was, I don't know, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan in a row, all of a sudden it's a different season. You start bringing some vulnerability into it, or Michigan the same way, or whatever team you want to pick. So like TCU did that, and they got through those tests, and it still didn't matter. The attrition on TCU did not matter. Like look what it did to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State broke down and completely folded mentally last week because they just couldn't take it. And got rolled over because of it. TCU has found a way to survive.
They had a road rivalry win.
Yeah,
4 consecutive ranked conference wins, and then went to Morgantown and won. Which, if you know anything about this,
it's very difficult.
It's
Absolutely.
a very difficult place to win, and they won.
And in the meantime, like just because I watched this team very close, Ohio State spent 40 minutes couldn't score against Iowa, while TCU is getting their brains beat out. Like. That is a huge difference. And I said that about Cincinnati last year when they were going down the stretch. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure, but it's just not as tough. What TCU has done schedule-wise has been and it's going to weigh on them, and they may give up a game because of it, and then they're going to be dismissed, but it's not going to be fair because they're going to have, one of the hardest stretches. So I don't like, that's my whole point. the committee, just put them up there and give them the chance to fail. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? You put TCU at 4 or 5 and they lose and we make fun of them. But at least they had the chance to succeed, as opposed to like, we'll put you at 7. If you put you at 7, I know what they're thinking. Maybe Alabama lose this week and they jump up 1. Are they really like, are they setting themselves up the next week? They actually have the balls to put them above Tennessee or Georgia. Like, do you think that's going to happen next week? Somebody's losing that game.
I would say.
I say no. I'm telling you right now, I'll say no.
That leans into what we wanted to cover as far as protected teams. And so I would say no. And here's why I say that. You ranked Georgia 3. You ranked Tennessee 1, right? Tennessee deservedly number 1 team in the country. We're not questioning Tennessee. But the scenario that happens now is if Tennessee, with having the Bama win on their resume, who is currently number 6, could obliterate number 10 LSU, which even let's say we'll just go with Tennessee losing just for this scenario. If Tennessee barely loses to Georgia, loses by a field goal, how do you justify them in the same breath on the same day, Alabama obliterates a number 10 LSU team? How do you justify Tennessee dropping but 3 to 4 spots for the simple fact they played a close game against the number 3 team? Who knows where Alabama will go after obliterating the number 10 team and turning around and having an opportunity to play the number 10 team the next week? Like, now you're valuing the Tennessee win even bigger and minimizing the fact that you have an L in the loss column, which at the end of the day, if you're a team who has an L right now, you should be coming from behind. There should still be a path, Alabama, because there is, but you should be having to fight and prove your way back in. Not undefeated teams who have handled business with good resumes, TCU. They should not be having to fight. What else do they have to prove? Like, what you're telling me right now is TCU has one more game left on their schedule to prove to you that they are the team that should be in the playoffs.
Well, they'll get a good Big 12 championship game.
And Baylor, yeah, I mean, they got Baylor and Texas left, but Baylor's not ranked right now.
Baylor and Texas on the road. It's bad. I have the schedule memorized. Texas Tech this week at home, and then on the road at Texas next week. On the road at Baylor after that, home for Iowa State, Big 12 championship against, right now, it would be Kansas State again.
And let's be clear, like a team like the Big 12's good this year. A team like Texas Tech is probably, I don't know, at least middle of the pack, at least like in the Big 10, if not better.
Yeah.
Probably the 4th.
Like Texas Tech is a fine team. That's not an easy team to like walk through. But what I don't like about it is LSU has like, as of right now, the path. I'm not saying who they got to play. LSU has almost the same path to get there as TCU, and LSU has 2 losses.
Yeah.
That's just the truth.
Yeah. And we'll visit that scenario in a couple weeks. Because
I can't wait to do my chaos scenarios.
Oregon has the same scenario as TCU, but they lost to Georgia.
I think we probably should have spent a few minutes talking about Oregon. I think that Oregon can jump almost everybody on this list. I think Oregon can make the playoffs.
I'll go ahead and tell you, if Oregon wins out and TCU wins out, TCU is going to get jumped.
I believe so. I think they'll jump Clemson. I think they'll let Oregon jump Clemson because of everything you said about Walker. That helmet, that's worthy of jumping Clemson.
But does that bad loss to Georgia just get forgotten about and thrown out the window then?
Yes.
Yeah, how do you factor that in?
I think it's already forgotten about.
I don't think it is. Like, I don't think it's forgotten about. Now, Oregon, granted,
has been running roughshod.
And if they won out, granted, I think they would have played probably, as of right now, I think they would see USC in the Pac-12 championship. I don't know their remaining schedule completely, but they would have had they beat UCLA, who's a top 15 team standing at number 12. Like, so if they win out and win, they'll have quality wins. So I won't take it away from Oregon, but like, even still, to me, if Clemson wins out and TCU wins out, Ohio State, Clemson, TCU win out, undefeated conference champs. And I don't know how you justify, and Tennessee or Georgia wins out, undefeated SEC champ. How do you justify a one-loss conference champ jumping undefeated conference champions, especially TCU? I could more so see the Clemson argument, but it's still tough for me to say
Well,
Now you're finally trying to tell me who the 4 best teams are, but any other time they don't try and do that. Like, then it wouldn't be consistent. Like, okay, now you're telling me we're going to put the 4 best teams on the field, barring whatever happens. And so Oregon is better than Clemson and TCU. But it's tough for me to see if there's 4 undefeated conference champs that a 1-loss conference champ gets in that's not coming out of the SEC. If Oregon was in the SEC, I think it'd be a little bit different. If we have a 1-loss SEC champ and they get in over Clemson or TCU, I understand it. But Oregon gets in after already getting obliterated by Georgia. I don't know if that gets forgotten about.
That doesn't get forgotten.
It's not losing, so it's how they lost.
Here's the thing. We'll wait. We'll save this for next week or maybe even the week after. But there's some conversations to be had about North Carolina, their chances. We already talked about Illinois. We're going to talk about, we're touching on Oregon and them. Like, there are some weird scenarios out there. And then let's not forget Notre Dame's in the mix. They get to play Clemson and USC, which are 2 contenders left. You get a ton of credit for beating Notre Dame late in the season. So USC or Clemson, I think a lot of these rankings have a lot to do with Clemson Notre Dame game coming up. So that's a big factor, because that way it's just how it is. These Showtime games, get that. So like, there's some teams on here like North Carolina, as of right now, can be like, we've got a path to the playoffs. If you really look at it, they've still got a path.
They could win out and be 1-loss ACC champs. And I think if North Carolina does do that, I think it would take definitely a lot of shaking up for them to get in. But they would at least.
It takes a lot of shaking up for every team, apparently. It takes a lot of shaking up to get TCU in. They're undefeated.
Yeah, with a strong resume. But North Carolina would be able to sit there at the end of the year. If they won out and was a 1-loss conference champ, and there's, let's say, multiple 1-loss conference champs or whatever, they could sit there and beat the drum and be like, we have an argument. Like, why not us? And then the committee will have to sit there. And now, granted, I'm not sure everyone will care as much that you leave North Carolina out, but you will have to explain it to the North Carolina fans.
Well, what if
anyone else could give a damn if North Carolina got in?
They would play Clemson in the ACC championship right now.
Yeah.
If they beat an undefeated Clemson,
yeah,
they and if everything, how college football works, we know a lot of these teams are going to lose, right? It's going to happen. That's how it always happens.
Have to. They play each other.
Yeah. So, like, it's going to happen. So, like, chaos can happen where North Carolina wins.
North Carolina is going to be a top 10 team in 2 weeks.
Oh, they'll be
Drake
in the
May is
top 3
that
to make
dude.
sure Clemson has a resume.
Drake May is that dude.
Exactly.
I watched them against Miami. He carved. He's that dude. He's that good. Like, and it runs in the family because his brother was a hooper at North Carolina. So, like, they're really good. And they can sneak. They could be one of those sneaky teams that get.
No, they absolutely. And again, if we have, we'll have this conversation another day. 12-team playoff. We're not talking about this. North Carolina is the lowest ranked team I see that has a legitimate shot. Yeah. There's probably 3 or 4 teams above them that don't. I don't think Kansas State can make it. I don't think Utah can make it. I don't think Penn State can make it.
Penn State's out the window. They got 2 Big Ten East losses. Like, they need. They need Ohio.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. To be ranked ahead, that's my whole point about the playoff rankings is like, why rank Penn State there?
Yeah. That was my next question I was going to ask.
They don't have a chance.
ESPN had brought it up, like, which team in the teens, I think they asked Kirk Herbstreit, which team in the teens is a team that you think can and I don't remember what team you said, but that was going to ask you guys that.
I take North Carolina. Because I think they're in the ACC. They got one big game left, to win. Yeah. And they just, the way it works out, I think because, like I say, Penn State can't. I don't think UCLA gets the benefit of the doubt. They're up there if we're going to call them in the teens. Unfortunately, Ole Miss, just the way it works out, like Walker said, they're just not going to get their shot even with 1 loss.
Well, I mean, I think that if you're Ole Miss, the way you get your shot is Alabama wins this week, and then you have to win. You have to win next week, and then win out.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I'm wrong. Yeah, good point. Yeah, they're still good.
If LSU loses, and Alabama's a 14-point favorite, so we're not stretching here. Then, I mean, it's like, all right, Alabama's coming to our place. You get a W, and then you have to beat Arkansas and Mississippi State to close your season.
Yeah.
And then you have to go to Atlanta and beat whoever wins this Tennessee-Georgia game. And then you're
when I was saying teens, I honestly, when I was saying teens, I was looking lower. Absolutely.
I think Illinois.
I think you can, like I say, I think Illinois, has the path, but no chance. Does that make any sense?
Right? Yeah.
But Penn State, Utah, Kansas State.
But if North Carolina has the same kind of path, then so would Illinois, because they play Michigan.
Yeah, but I think North Carolina can win those games. I don't.
Yeah,
If
I
you
don't
tell
think
me right,
they
if you tell me right now Illinois is going to beat Michigan and Ohio State, like it is hard for me to sign
Carolina
up
has an
for
easy
that.
schedule too. They don't really have a tough. It's Wake and NC State. That's
Wait,
it.
I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a buyer on the North Carolina thing, but
Oh,
yeah.
neither am I. But I'm saying
They have the path though. I think that's what
they
we're
have
trying to
the
argue. Is
path.
that they have the path.
No, I totally understand. Yeah,
As to where
totally agree,
Kansas
totally
State, as to where if you give me 12-team playoff and you tell me we're playing Kansas State, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
But they can't make the playoffs. So like I'm kind of eliminating teams that I just don't think can make it. Next week, what sucks is they're right about everything they said. Next week, so much of this is going to clear itself up because of the matchups. It may actually makes me mad because this is what the committee does. They can do whatever they want, and it's not going to matter next week.
No,
But
and
you
that's
waste
why
the
I
ranking.
don't want to hear it. Like, that's why I'm like, you know what? Like, I get it. Yeah, it'll clear itself up. That doesn't excuse the absolute incompetent, utter
Agreed.
bullshit you put on my TV.
Agreed.
Yeah, and
Which
my
it
biggest
wasn't even on my TV, but point stands.
my biggest problem is like, okay, like, and Jeff has alluded to it multiple times, is like, if you're going to tell me the initial ranking doesn't matter, then why do it? Like, why constantly have these rankings if you're like, okay, well, Tennessee or Georgia is going to eliminate each other essentially, when essentially they're not going to eliminate each other. They're just going to calm the conversation down until after the conference championship is played. And if that's Tennessee's only loss or that's Georgia's only loss, now you're giving me a reason why they have an opportunity to jump back in depending on how the rest of the season shakes out. Oh, well, Ohio State and Michigan play each other, so until then, we can put them wherever they want because it comes down to that game. So then what's the point in having these rankings? Like, we should stick to the AP poll until the final. The only ranking that should matter is after the conference championships, when the playoff committee comes in and be like, we have a full season's resume, we have the conference champs, we have everything laid out in front of us, and we get to finally come to the decision. Because for the first time in a while, like, the AP poll has it way more right to me than the college football playoff. And I don't typically say that because a lot of times we feel like the AP poll doesn't care, especially right about now, because they know once the playoff comes, the AP poll can do whatever they want. Why? Because once week one of the college football playoff comes, you don't even look at the AP poll. ESPN doesn't even announce the AP poll anymore. It's about, oh yeah, they put them at 15, but well, the committee shows it Tuesday at 7:00 Eastern. So make sure you tune in to hear who's ranked where. The AP poll right becomes irrelevant. But I think you should just wait, because you're telling us, hey, we got Tennessee 1, Georgia 3, the week that they play each other. But it doesn't matter. It's going to shake itself out. We got Ohio State 2 and Michigan 5, but it doesn't matter. They play each other at the end of the season to go play on for a conference championship, so it's going to shake itself out. Oh, we got 2 lost LSU with really, Vegas tells us no chance. They're 2 touchdown dogs, which tells me they don't have a chance. But you know what? It bolsters Alabama's resume if they cover and beat the dog crap out of LSU. Like, now Alabama looks a lot better, and it protects Tennessee, because if Tennessee loses a close game to Georgia, well, they also still beat an Alabama team who obliterated an LSU team after Tennessee's already obliterated LSU. Like, they're going to use the whole transitive property where they want to and where it makes sense.
This is one of those seasons. Here's what's funny. If you would just listen to all the excuses from every conference, every team, Arkansas, Penn State, UCLA are the best teams in the country, because that's how you, like, oh yeah, but that was a tougher game than it looked like, or that was a tougher game than it looked like. These are the teams that really matter. Notre Dame is going to have a huge factor in these playoffs, because by the end of the season, they're going to be playing better. They're going to look better. So Ohio State, Clemson, USC are going to get credit for beating Notre Dame, like things like that. And then North Carolina is going to get punished for it. Like, these are the teams that really matter, are the ones that, like, Arkansas is going to get a lot of credit. Good team. Like, Alabama is going to get a ton of credit for beating Arkansas. Like things like that are the excuses that they use, even though we already talked about early in the show. It's really week to week. It's that team that week that matters, you know?
Yeah, but it's still, it's the whole, like, my problem is, like you said, Jeff, like, LSU being 10 is for TV. It's for ratings. It's for, number 6 versus number 10. But at the
that one, I believe for sure. I believe LSU is that is purely
the hidden message, is like, it bolsters Alabama if they take care of business. This is a spot where Alabama blows a team out because they have a loss or whatever. So it bolsters Alabama if they beat the number 10 team in the country soundly, because
again, Alabama's got a straight path. So it really doesn't matter who Alabama beats. That's why I don't really agree with that. I think I don't know if it's to get you to watch or whatever, but if you're going to talk about like you need to beat a good team, like Ohio State and Michigan have no chance to make the playoffs. That's my point. Like, I don't think it matters who Alabama beats. Like, if they get to the championship game and they beat Georgia or Tennessee, whoever's great, they've got a really good shot. I don't think it matters what they look like against LSU this weekend. I don't think there's anything that can keep them out if they win out.
Yeah, and that's all they have to do is win out, because they're essentially winning out turns into being a one-loss SEC champ, having beat certain teams. And at the end of the day, your last game will be against Tennessee or Georgia. So what you did prior to that, if you're a one-loss team, but you beat Tennessee or Georgia, the whole slate.
That's why I don't understand the LSU thing. I don't see the upside except for it looks cool. I really like,
unless LSU wins now, we'll talk. If LSU wins this week on Phil Stormers, we will have, because a scenario that could come into fruition would now look more possible. But the scenario with LSU is based on them beating Alabama, but they don't have that tough of a schedule after this if they beat Alabama. So we'll talk about that scenario if that happens, because that could shake up the whole committee.
I just want to real quick to be ahead of this. I think LSU can beat Alabama. I totally think that.
I think they can win.
If they ding up Bryce Young early in that game, they win the game. Like, I don't think it's that. And I think that's every team. I mean, I say that a lot, but this isn't like a foregone conclusion that Alabama's going to beat LSU, because I think the talent's close enough. And I'll say it next week if it's Ole Miss or whoever. But when these games get close, just like last week, if Stroud gets tackled wrong, Penn State wins that game. Like, I don't think these good teams are separated by that much, and I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think this isn't a video game. I don't think LSU doesn't have a chance. I think they have every chance to win this game. They just need some Alabama. Something unfortunate happens, it can go down that way. Same with all the good matchups.
We'll get some answers this week.
We sure do.
Oh yeah,
but that's what I hate, Walker. It's good weekend, and it bails the committee out. That's what we don't like.
The old helmets are going to take care of those orange-hatted frauds this weekend in South Bend. Notre Dame's going to take care of Clemson.
Most Ohio State fans will be very happy to hear that.
Notre Dame's going to take care of this Clemson thing and put it to bed once and for all.
We'll just be done with it.
And we're just going to be done with it, and I can shit on them next week.
Because all Clemson has to do is drop a game, and that Clemson conversation
it's over.
It's over. And I think the committee would rather that is like Notre Dame, because then here's what they get to do. They get to be like, Notre Dame beat Syracuse, and then they beat Clemson. It boosters Ohio State straight to schedule or whatever, but we get to get rid of Clemson. We don't even have to think about them. Maybe if they're a one-loss college football champ or ACC champ, then, we probably think about it, a little bit differently. But I think one loss boosts Clemson out the way. So we about to close out. So before we close out, just final thoughts, Walker. What are your final thoughts? Give me your Tennessee. Just tell me who you think wins out of Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and final thoughts.
I'm throwing Notre Dame Clemson on the end of that, because that's another big game this weekend.
Okay.
So, final thoughts. This sucked. These rankings suck. Again, they shouldn't happen. This is stupid. It's all propaganda that we put on TV. Anyway, but so Tennessee, Georgia. I got Georgia. I don't think I'm not going to do the Georgia by 14 thing I did like with Alabama. It's not that I don't think Tennessee's good. I just, I have my doubts about Tennessee getting away from Neyland and being able to beat a team of this caliber. They blew Kentucky out at home, which I put Tennessee on upset alert last week. I'll own that here now. Terrible call, totally wrong, way off. But this week, I just have, I have my doubts about them being able to go into Sanford. Georgia's kind of been building towards this moment too, just like Tennessee has. So I think home field wins out. Georgia wins by right around a touchdown, 7 to 10 points. Nothing that's going to harm Tennessee from going 11-1. I do think that Georgia in the end gets the W. And then I already said Notre Dame, they'll take care of Clemson by, I hope they name the score. I hope we get to that place where they can just name the score and beat them by 63. And then what was the other one? You said Alabama, LSU?
Yeah, Alabama, LSU, winner.
Yeah, Alabama big. Alabama really big. Really big.
Okay, not holding back there. Jeff, Tennessee, Georgia winner, Alabama, LSU winner. And go ahead and give me your Notre Dame, Clemson winner since Walker brought it up.
I got Tennessee winning. You guys hear me all right, okay?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got another show queued up for later. Tennessee wins, I think, because I think it's a matchup thing. I think the one way everybody tells me you want to expose Tennessee is through the passing game. I don't think that's Georgia's strength right now. I think on the outside, I'm not saying they don't have the athletes, but just I haven't seen that rhythm. I don't see multiple wide receivers, getting in the game. I don't think they can expose Tennessee's defense like other teams can. But I think right now Tennessee's offense is good enough to score on anybody. So even if they don't score 50, I think they can get the scores when they need them. I think if they have 2 minutes and they need to go down and get a score, they can do it. I think Tennessee's the best team in the country. I think they beat Georgia. As far as Clemson, Notre Dame, I think Clemson wins because I think Notre Dame sucks and I hate them. But it's not because I want Clemson to win. It's like this is one of those games that like somebody's got to lose. I'm with Walker. It benefits me and most of the country for Clemson to lose, so I'm good for that. But if I'm going to be an analyst and pick it, I think it's probably kind of a terrible game that Clemson wins. And then the Alabama game, I already said it. I think Alabama's the better team. I think they win, but I think it's close. I think these teams, and I've seen Kelly do this with, especially from all the times I've watched Notre Dame play over the years. I think this team is ready for the game. I think they've been, gearing up for this one. And I think if Bryce Young stays, clean, it's a mismatch. I think Alabama runs. I think a rough tackle or a weird spot, then I think Notre Dame or not Notre Dame. Sorry, LSU's got a chance.
Yeah, yes. I will say this though, like Alabama off a bye. It'll be interesting to see how healthy Bryce looks after basically not doing anything for 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? I know the shoulder things don't typically get better, but does he have a little bit of extra?
He's looked great coming off the injury. I questioned him against Tennessee, and he showed up.
And then the other thing too is I think I think it's just like natural, and maybe it's a little bit of recency bias from like the last 5 years. I think Georgia's offense may be the most underrated unit in the country right now. Like I think offensively, they're maybe one tick off Tennessee. Like I think
here's what's funny. Their points are up there. Everything is up there. They can run the ball. They can run the ball when they want to. They're very good. All I'm saying is like, if you tell me, if I wake up Sunday morning and you tell me it's 49-48 Tennessee, I believe it.
Oh, 100%.
I'm not by any means saying Georgia is a fraud or anything like that.
Oh no, I understood what you were saying. I just it's kind of funny, and maybe it's just like me reading too much. And like I've learned with college football, the more you read, that maybe you shouldn't.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, like I think that because I think people still think Stetson Bennett's not good. And
I'd say in Walker, it goes the opposite with a team that I watch all the time. Ohio State's. This sounds crazy. Ohio State's offense is overrated the last 2 weeks. Like they've had trouble scoring the first 3 quarters of 2 games in a row against Big Ten teams. So when it's all said and done, it looks great. But if you really watch it, there's holes in it, just like Georgia.
Shoot me, but I become less and less of a Stroud guy every single time I watch him. Like he may win the Heisman, he may put up the best numbers in the country, they may go undefeated, but like there's just something there.
There's something missing.
There's something missing.
But I'll take him, but I agree with you at the same time. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make my pick. I'm taking Tennessee. I'm rocking with the family. I've been rocking with Tennessee. I told people before the season that's like my one big hit I get to take. Like I might be wrong on a lot of stuff, but I told people Tennessee was going to be really, really, really good going into this season. So I'm going to rock with the family. Tennessee, good old Rocky Top takes it home in a very close victory on the road. I'm rocking with my guy. I'm taking LSU over Alabama because I want to see it.
Right.
Make the committee go crazy. Put a scenario where they have to explain it, make the committee go crazy, make the college football world go crazy, and make us wonder what the buildup will be where LSU goes on Tuesday night after beating Alabama. Give us a scenario where a 2-loss LSU team could win the SEC championship and cause chaos. And I'm taking Notre Dame over Clemson for the simple fact, mop Clemson on up out of here. They're not a good team. They have quarterback issues.
They're a good team.
They're good. They're just not college football playoff good. Dabo's a douchebag. He lies on the stand every time he gets asked the question. He BS's the whole college football. He BS's the whole college football world, and we still pay attention to anything he says.
Hey, he just does it the right way, Mo. He just does it the right way.
Steph Curry, you know, after getting benched and Cade Klubnik coming in, we compared DJU to Steph Curry, and that was words out of his mouth. Even Steph Curry has a bad shooting.
That was nuts.
Yeah, sure.
I remember that.
Smoke your own dope by selling us that DJU is Steph Curry after getting benched. Sure, Steph Curry has a bad shooting night and doesn't get benched for freaking Sean Livingston today. So I don't want to hear that. So yeah, I'm taking Notre Dame over Clemson. Build it up. Get Clemson on up out of there. And yeah, that's what I have for this week. Chris, do you want to make your predictions real quick, or are you good?
I'm gonna go Clemson.
Take Notre Dame, coward.
I can't do that. I can't stand Notre Dame. I wish nothing good for Notre Dame. So
yeah, I'm with you, Chris.
Yeah, and I don't like Clemson either, but I can't root for Notre Dame. It's just I can't do that to myself. It's against my religion to do that. But we're gonna go there. I think it's a close game though, because every Clemson game's a close game. I think what was the other game? LSU, Bama. I think Bama takes care of business there. Bryce Young getting healthier. I think they run the ball well against LSU. And Tennessee, Georgia. I think Georgia wins. I think the hype on Tennessee is, the number one team and all that. I think they disappoint the country.
Don't be rude.
I think Georgia is going to win by 2 touchdowns.
Oh,
turn
on the TikTok camera. Turn on the TikTok camera.
You could clip this one up and put on freezing hot takes or whatever that's called. If I'm wrong, but I think Georgia wins big. Their defense is really good. I know they lost their guy to he's out for the season. What's his name? I forgot his name.
Nolan Smith out for the
Nolan
year.
Smith. I know he's out, but I think they contain that high octane offense.
Sometime I want to have a question on how much points a player can be worth, because I started thinking about it today and I have some big thoughts on that, but I know we don't have enough time right now. All I'll say is this real quick. I'll just leave you guys with this. If I say one player's worth a touchdown, that sounds crazy. But if I say one player is worth one play and that play is a touchdown, that makes sense. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Ooh,
It's all about positional value, Jeff.
Walker, you see what I'm saying?
Jeff leaves us with the Yoda mastermind thought process. So we're going to close it out. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, listening on this fire edition of Field Stormers. We'll be back next week. College football playoff reaction as well. Week two of the college football playoffs. We'll break down some of these games, and hopefully we won't be up in flames in that reference. Hopefully we won't be, off the walls next week about the college football rankings. So I appreciate
I will be. I can guarantee I'll be upset about whatever happens.
Because
Ohio State is going to beat Northwestern by 60, and I'm going to be the maddest person in America at 3:30 on Saturday.
Yeah,
I love college football, and I love being mad about it.
Unranked, they shit their fraud.
Ohio State is not a good team anymore.
If anybody calls them Ohio again, I'm driving to their house and fighting them and getting beat up.
Ohio should replace them in the conference.
Speaking of, Jeff, actually Ohio's on TV right now. You should go watch it. I've got it on.
We do not watch Ohio in this household. Even though my wife
is that like
enough of
not really.
No,
not really. My wife actually graduated from Ohio.
Tuesday, Wednesday action for the sickest of us.
Yeah, enough. Nobody cares about the action. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, listening. Appreciate everybody for commenting, showing love. Make sure you share this to everybody. Appreciate all the viewership. Go Vols for this week. Obviously, it's
go college football. What a great week.
I hope the family is excited, and we'll catch y'all next week on another edition of Field Stormers.